And tonight's speaker comes to us from NABA. She is also quite involved in Zoom meeting service work and sponsors a lot of women, and I'm very excited to hear Marianne's story.
Hi, I'm Marianne. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for everyone for being here, because I cannot bless you. I can't stay sober without you all. My sobriety day is March 24th, 2020. And, yeah, I can't believe it. I'm shocked. And my sponsor's laughing because she can't believe it either. No, I have the best sponsor. So I'm just going to read a little bit. Page 17, there is a solution. I love this part. We are people who normally would not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. We are like the passengers of a great liner, the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. Unlike the feelings of the ship's passengers, however, our joy in escape from disaster does not subside as we go our individual ways. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. But that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and sisterly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. That gives me chills. I love that. And Marianne, I'm an alcoholic. I was born to a family of 8 kids. I was the 5th. Big Catholic family. Mom and Dad were converts from Baptist, and so we got double guilt, double shame, They were good parents. We had a lot of strife. A brother that was born with brain damage, so he has since passed on. I was very close to Paul. But he was, traumatized in a lot of ways, and so he acted out, so there was a lot of violence. I can always remember at the earliest that I had a fear of abandonment at just a very early age. I always felt different. I never felt good enough. I had my first sip of beer when I was about 4 years old, 4 or 5. I was sitting on my dad's lap, and I'll never forget. I mean, he just said, "Hey, here," and, I took that sip, and it was real bitter. But I remember it was kind of good. As time went on, I would move every 2 to 5 years because my father worked for the railroad. So every time he was promoted, he had to move. And so that started, I was always the friendly one, the friendly sister in the family, the one that made all the friends. But that's when my drinking started. So probably about 13, 14 when we moved to Kansas. So I, just started drinking. Funny thing about when I drank, because I hear that when people drink, they just get this, oh my God, this magnificent thing, and then they know they've come home. But I just got sick. Then I went back and I said, "Hey, can I have some more?" But I didn't like the feeling of being out of control. But I drank, and probably I drank because I wanted to fit in. So it wasn't until down the road that I loved the feeling of it, I loved the taste of it, and then I could mix, and then towards the end, when the progression sped up, I just mixed, and I could just drink anything and everything, and it was wonderful. But there was just a lot of sickness during that time of me, drinking. But the funny thing is I could never just have one, and I do remember that at a very early age. I could just never have one. There was a time when we moved to Naperville, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago, and we got a phone call, my parents did, that my brother John, his roommates had called and said, "You need to come get John because he's out of his mind and he's been drinking." And I guess he just took off running. So my parents went and picked him up, brought him home, took him to the doctor. The doctor told my parents that John had an allergy and that he shouldn't drink again. And that was the first time I'd ever heard allergy. I was going to college myself. Thought I was Miss Smarty Pants because I'd taken a class in alcoholism. So I thought I knew everything. Oh, I could pick him out. That guy's an alcoholic. Oh, God, she's got a problem. But I had never heard that. So I said, well, Mom, what does that mean? She said, well, he can just never drink again. I don't know if the doctor said, go to AA. So that was my first time. I had something that was profound that happened in my life when I was about 17. That changed my life. Just changed it. And I started drinking a lot then. And that was the disco era. So I was out. I should have been home studying, and I was out, dancing my head off. A lot of stupid stuff going down, going up an exit ramp, just frightening things when I look back. Once again, I couldn't have just one. It was just, once again, I'm always getting sick. And I was the blubbering alcoholic that would just cry. You didn't want me around. I mean, I'd tell you my whole story, and it was awful. In that disco time, I met this guy in the bar, and he came up to me and asked me out, and I said, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Because he was all bandaged up. And he goes, well, I got into an accident and I went underneath a trailer truck thing. And he said, can I have your phone number? I said, sure. So he came to pick me up, and I'll never forget. He made me turn around. He goes, okay, now turn around. Oh, yeah, I guess your hair is that long. Oh, yeah, well, I didn't recognize you. He was so loaded in the bar. And then I went out with him for 2 years. So who does that? 6 months in. Now here it is again. That feeling of unworthiness. I cannot say no. I'm just going to go with the flow. So because 6 months in, I knew I've got to get out of this relationship. Yet I was in it for another year and a half. And then I moved because that's what I'm told that a lot of us do to get away from stuff. So I moved to Kansas City and broke up with him, and that was probably the best thing that I ever did. My drinking it just picked up. And I was working and everything, and I met my husband, and we were two peas in a pod because he did not drink, but he came from an alcoholic family. He watched his father die of alcoholism, and he was 16 and left his mom with 7 kids. So we just bonded very quickly on so many things. Fell in love. We got married within an 8-month period, and we've been together for 41 years, and God bless him because I don't know how he's done it. When we moved to Atlanta, we had 2 kids, and the drinking kind of stopped, and I didn't have it in the house. And when I went out, I worked in the medical field. When we would have parties and stuff, of course, I was always happy there was an open bar. And of course, I could never just have one, and then I would get sick. But that just happened just periodically. Then in 1984, my brother John, the one that I had mentioned to you before that said the doctor told him he had an allergy, took his life. 24 years old, he drank until he had a 0.3 or 4 or something. He should have been comatose. And then he shot himself. That was horrible. I just remember thinking, what happened, and now I look back and I think, oh my gosh, I think he was an alcoholic. That death changed me. That was a big thing in my life. But here starts at this point, the obsession is kicking in. Because I just wanted to be a mom, and I had good relationships with my kids, and when each one of them moved away, I was devastated. I went into a depression. I didn't understand the mothers that said, oh, I've got an empty nest, yay, because I didn't know what to do. But I started drinking a lot, and then I started at a startup Medicare company. And that is when I started shopping for beer, craft beer, wine, because I had a job that I set up these huge events and people would come from all over. And the wine was the guy, the owner was from France, so he'd bring in this red wine, and so. But that was when the obsession started, and I remember going to Total Wine, and I would take my little notepad and I'd take notes. So I do remember that, and then I remember getting up. It was very fast-paced, insane business. And I remember looking in the mirror, and I heard a voice say, "You're going to have to deal with your alcoholism one day." And I remember saying out loud, "Well, I'm not now." Then we moved to Denver for a year. And that is when I was obsessed, totally obsessed, and I was drinking every day. So that was about in 2014. And I was drinking every day. My husband was starting to mention, "Marianne, you're spending a little bit too much money, on beer." So I felt so guilty, but yet that car would just pull in. And so then we got back after a year, and this is where things just changed dramatically. No one knew I was drinking except for my husband, and he's an illustrator, and then he worked security for years at night. So I was home alone, so I was a 9 to 5 drinker. I'd come home, I'd go for my walk, because I've got to be healthy, and then I'd go pick up a couple of bottles of wine, and then I would, go home and drink. And he could always tell. I mean, he'd say, "Oh, God, you're drinking again." Then he said, "Why don't he said something about the money. And I said, "Look," I said, "you eat a lot of McDonald's and French fries, so we're going to do a little list." So he had to give me all his receipts, and I kept all my receipts. Of course I lied. Yeah, I don't know why he didn't say, "Well, where's your receipt?" I said, "You have spent," well, I did it, we did it for like 2 weeks. I said, "You have spent a lot more than me." But I was awful. But I remember feeling so guilty because once again, I'd feel the car just drive, and he would be saying, I would be on the phone, "Where are you now?" And I'm almost home. "Well, I hope you're not going to wherever." And I would be. And so I would pull in. And just the guilt, it was just the shame, and it was awful. I couldn't stop. And I remember in all of that, my daughter visiting, and that was the physical addiction. I put her on the plane, and I said to myself, I can't stop. I can't stop. And that was in 2018, 19. So all of this was going on. Then we had 4 deaths right in a row. Really, like a couple of months in a row. My son's brother took his life. My uncle died, and then my brother died, and then my mother-in-law died. And I drank. And this is when I started hiding. I started lying. On the weekends, I can remember, the 5 o'clock drink now. It was coming, up to 1 o'clock. It was moving upward, and my husband was saying more and more things to me, and I would get irritated. And then the whole tea thing that we were talking about before I got up here, I would get a cup of tea at night, watch Dateline, and I'd have the tea bag over, but the tea bag was not there, just the string. And then, Mark would just, "Yeah, but you're enjoying that tea." Just stupid. And then I would hide them. I didn't even think I would hide them just really out. Who was it? It was Bill or Bob that stuck their stuff in a mitten, and then he threw it out to make sure to be cold in the snow. And I didn't have those clever ideas. They were like right out in the open. And that's when I was mixing. It was beer and whiskey. It was wine and maybe a vodka tonic, all before I went to bed. So we'll speed up now to June of 2019. Things were getting bad. I was drinking and driving all the time. There was one time my daughter came to visit, and my granddaughter, and it was around Christmas time, and we drove around the neighborhood looking at lights, and I had a beer in my lap. And another very shameful time, because we got home, and I looked at my daughter, and I said, I guess I wasn't this is not a good, I'm not being a good role model. And I can't believe that she said, "No, it's not, Mom." And then I was so ridden with guilt, because of the money situation again. So then I started stealing. So I would go to Kroger and I would get those boxes, and I did it several times. And then, I'd open them up and drink and throw it in the next aisle. And, and I thought, okay, that'll help me feel better. But all the while not worried about the cameras until I got home, and then I'd go, oh my God, the cops are going to come and, knock on my door. But just stuff like that was not normal. In June, my brother-in-law from New York came to visit, and I said, Chris, you can't tell anybody, but I said, I think I have a problem. Would you go to my first AA meeting? So he did. He took me. And so that was a speaker meeting, and this guy talked about it was horrible. I said, oh my God, I don't think I belong here. So then Chris went home, and he said, you're going to go to meetings, and I said, yeah. And then he would send little affirmations every day, still does. And I told him, I'm not going. I don't want to go. And I'll do that. I'll do it later, whatever. And he goes, well, God helps those who help out. I was so pissed off. I thought, what is he talking about, And then fast forward, I tried to do it on my own. My husband allowed this, he said, but he was not buying my stuff at that time. I couldn't send him out to buy my stuff. But he said, try whatever you want. So I did. And it didn't work. So the day that he sat me down was when I had that mustard seed of willingness, and it came, my higher power spoke through my husband, and he said, Marianne, your eyes are crazy, and you are so puffy. He said, you're saturated. You said you're an alcoholic, and you got to go get help. So I said, okay, and that was it. That was the day. So came to NABA, picked up my white chip, didn't know if I was an alcoholic. A lady stopped and she said, do you think you're an alcoholic? And I said, I don't know. Of course, I'm crying. And she walked me over to that cabinet and she bought me my big book. I could not believe the love and the warmth, and I could not believe, and still can't, the honesty in the rooms. I just thought, oh my God. So it didn't take me long, a couple of weeks, to realize. I went home and read some stuff she told me to read and to figure out, I'm definitely an alcoholic. And then I was able to start saying, hi, I'm Marianne, I'm an alcoholic. But that was a big thing for me to get over. And right before I came into the rooms, I had a terrible blackout, so that was another one. I wanted to do everything that was required of me. I was probably the kind, I was the kind that came in and I just said, I don't know what those are, but I'm going to get through them really fast. And then I got this sponsor, and she was never available, and then she was always on the phone talking to her boyfriend, and something just told me, I don't. So I just waited a while, and I'm not suggesting you do this, but I waited. I came in November, and then I waited a couple more months, and then I found my sponsor. How did I find her? It was my higher power. We were sitting in this room. It was on Saturday. She was in that seat, and I was over here. And there was just something about her, and I thought, I want what she has. Somebody was up here. There was a lull in the discussion, and he goes, "Well, Patty, how are you today? What's going on?" And she goes, "Well, I'm just a regular old alcoholic trying to stay sober." And I thought, that's who I want to be my sponsor. And so that was around Christmas time, and she told me what to read and all of that. So I started that. Couldn't wait to get to the within the pandemic. So yeah, the pandemic hit, and I relapsed. I used to say, I just relapsed for 5 hours, but I relapsed. She told me, I called and she said, call me when you feel better, go to the 545 and pick up your white chip. And I said, no, I can't do it. She goes, yeah, you can. So I did. And then I was round the clock on meetings on Zoom, and thank God for Zoom, because I don't know what I would have done. And then I couldn't wait to get to the fourth step. I don't know why, but I just wanted to write. I did that, and then the fifth step, because I really felt close to her and I felt safe, I was able to disclose all of that. And it was a relief. It was a relief. And then, of course, 5, 6, and then 7 and 8. I had a problem with 6 asking God to remove all my defects of character because I didn't know what the hell that meant. I said, I've got so many defects. How does God come and pluck them all out? I don't know. Now, somebody in the 930 said this the other day, that the 6 and 7 we kind of live in, but the 6 is when we recognize our defects of character. That's when we give it to God, to our higher power. And then we see it. We're just willing. We're willing to let it go, I guess. And here I thought I was going to be perfect, but that's not how it worked. So I had no problem with 4 or 5. I had no problem with 8 and 9. It was the biggest experience thing that I got out of 8 and 9 and 4 and 5 was seeing my patterns. You know, how I lied. I always made it about myself. I was self-righteous. You had to believe what you had to understand me. Otherwise, that was it. I had such anger. You know, like if you pissed me off, you know, I would take it for a while, and then I would just go off, and you would know what hit you, and then, you know, then I'd want you to be my best friend later, and I'd wonder why. So I got to see the patterns, and the biggest thing another thing that I learned in making amends was my sponsor suggested you don't apologize, you say, I was wrong. That was huge because I always had, well, you know, sorry, but. And Mark and I went to therapy one time, and she said, you guys are never going to get past this if you say the but. She said, you got to stop that, because that really makes me responsible for what I'm doing. The only amend that I had trouble with was my daughter-in-law, because I really dug deep and I couldn't find anything that I had done. And so finally I just ended with, well, now I want her to be somebody she's not, because she has not been kind. So that was the only one, but the beauty of, there's so many good things about this program. Just one example, the other day, a couple weeks ago, my daughter came to visit, and I was really had my eyes on her partner because he's in active alcoholism. So I just was looking, I was saying little things, thinking I was hiding, you know, the bullshit that I used to do. And she goes, Mom, you're saying this, you're saying this, you're saying this. And I said, no, that's not what I meant. And then she goes, okay. And I thought, no, Marianne, you're not gonna let this go. So I called her in the room, and through tears, I said, everything you said was correct. I was criticizing Max in my head. I was, but, and she just kind of, and then we hugged, and that was a very profound, eye-opening moment, and I just thought, I couldn't have done that had it not been for AA, truly. And I love how, because it's honest, openness, and willingness, you know, and if I can be willing, then the honesty and openness hopefully will come. I love the meeting makers make it. I've heard more people say when people go out after a long time, after many years, that if you talk to them, they'll say, well, I stopped going to meetings, stopped being a part of. And so I kind of book in my day. I'll try to go to 9:30 when I don't have to work, and then 5:45 every day on Zoom, and that bookends my day. And of course, I drank in the evening, so I've got to have that 5:45, whether I'm feeling like it or not. And the other thing that helped me when I was newly sober, and still does, is HALT, the hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So, because I can drink with all those, especially the anger. Well, I'll show him, that mother, you know. But the tiredness too, you know, it's like, because then the depression comes on and, you know, all that kind of stuff. That, has saved me. The 24 hours a day has saved me. We have a 24-hour reprieve, and that has saved me because I always was looking in the future, always in the past, not forgiving myself. They always say resentment is our number one offender, and if we're in the past, we're nursing a resentment, and I have found that to be true. Let go, let God, just all of the stuff that you hear in the rooms, and a lot of it that I thought was kind of silly. The one thing I didn't understand is if you take one drink, that's one drink too many. I couldn't understand that, but now I do. And also, too, another thing that keeps me sober is, because they tell me that I came in at my higher bottom. I hadn't had any of the X. I didn't go to prison. I hadn't gone to rehab. I hadn't killed anybody. Hadn't killed myself. But the pain is still there. The incomparable, what do they say? Yeah. So that is still there. But what I find in these rooms are the stories, the honesty, and I hear. They say to look at the similarities, but I look at the differences. If I can't find a similarity, I look at the differences because that's what keeps me sober. Like I'll hear the stories and I'll think, oh my God, that's awful. I can't even imagine. In fact, I remember telling my sponsor, I might have to relapse because I'm just not as bad as these people. And of course, then I did. But it's the honesty, and you don't find that. You don't find that out there. And so that's why I keep coming back, is to hear your stories. I need your support. It's not always the easiest for me, because I have a hard time trusting to develop new relationships. But my sponsor would always say, it gets better and better, Marianne. And now 5 years down the road, I have several people that I can say are truly good friends. And then all of you, I know, if I had your phone numbers, I'd call you, and you would say, don't pick up the drink, Marianne. And where can we go that has that? I can't think of any other place. I'll end with this. My niece, in the 5 years, it's not been, as my friend says, tra-la-la, all, bed of roses. We've had some death. My niece, who's 48, died of cirrhosis of the liver due to alcoholism, and then her husband died like 5 days before her. So we went to that funeral. My mother passed away in November 7th, and that's been difficult. I kind of am turning a corner now. I didn't want to drink. So therein lies the miracle of this program. So just keep coming back, you guys. It gets better and better and better. That's all I got. Thank you for listening.
Thank God for the honesty and patterns, and thank you for your honesty and your hope, Marianne. We've asked Tinsley to come up and hand out the chips.
Hey everybody, my name is Tinsley. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much, Marianne. That was great. I'm so grateful to have you in my life. Here at this meeting, we offer chip system to mark our time away from our last drink. If you'd like to try this way of life one day at a time, offer a white chip.
First I slept, and then I crept to a hope-filled dream. You rescued me, and finally, waking there I see. I look into love's window for a soul that's meant for me. Takes me where the promises all live. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slow, we get just what we need. on a broad highway, God walks by, we walk eternally. Look into those windows for a heart that beats for me. Takes me where the promises are real. And I always long for something that